My brother's wedding invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks before I even opened it. Not because I was busy, because I already knew something was off. Let me back up. I'm the oldest of 3. My brother is 31, my sister is 28, and I'm 33. Our parents divorced when I was 16, which meant I grew up fast. My mom worked double shifts at a hospital, and my dad remarried within a year and started a whole new family in Phoenix. So by the time my brother was in high school, I was already the one helping him with college applications, co-signing his first apartment lease, and sending money when his roommate bailed on rent. I didn't think twice about it. That's just what you do for family. What hurt more, finding out they'd planned it, or realizing how long they'd been planning it? I'll come back to that. My brother, I'll call him my brother because that's what he was to me for 33 years, even if he stopped acting like it, got engaged 2 years ago to a woman I'll call his fiancée. She was fine, perfectly pleasant at Thanksgiving, remembered my coffee order once, smiled in all the right places. I didn't love her for him, but I didn't say that. It wasn't my place. When they got engaged, my brother called me before he called our mom. That felt significant. He said, "You're the first person I'm telling." I cried a little. I helped him pick out a venue. I connected him with a friend of mine who does event coordination at a discount for people she likes. I fronted $3,000 for the deposit when his bank account was short, and he promised to pay me back before the wedding. He never paid me back. That's a small detail compared to what came later, but I want you to understand the pattern. I want you to see it clearly, the same way I eventually did. Not all at once, but slowly, like a photograph developing in a dark room. Over the next 18 months, I became the unofficial wedding planner for a wedding I was barely consulted about. I made calls. I researched florists. I drove 40 minutes to a cake tasting because my brother said his fiancée trusted my taste. I took a day off work, unpaid because I was freelancing at the time, to help them visit 3 reception halls. I built them a shared spreadsheet with vendors, pricing tiers, notes on each one. My sister, who lived closer to them, contributed exactly nothing except opinions on the bridesmaid dress color. My sister. I should tell you about my sister too. She's the youngest, and she's always been the one my mom called the sweet one, which really meant she was the one who caused no friction, agreed with whoever was in the room, and let people like me do the heavy lifting while she smiled and got credit for the good energy she brought. She and my brother are close in a way that always had a slight edge to it, a closeness that occasionally felt like an alliance. I noticed it growing up. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. 4 months before the wedding, I got a text from my brother. Not a call. A text. It said, "Hey, so there's been a lot of conversations happening, and we've decided to keep the wedding small. Really small. Immediate family and close friends only. I'm sorry, but we won't be able to include you on the guest list. It's not personal." I read it 3 times. It's not personal. I want you to sit with that for a second. The person who co-signed his lease, who sent money when he was short on rent, who spent 18 months helping plan his wedding, who was still owed $3,000 for a venue deposit. That person was receiving a text, not even a phone call, saying she was not invited, and the explanation was, "It's not personal." I didn't respond right away. I've learned, over years of dealing with this family dynamic, that my first reaction is always too emotional, and my second reaction is always more useful. So I set my phone face down, made myself a cup of tea, and sat with it for about 40 minutes. Then I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring, which told me she was waiting for my call. She already knew. "I heard," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think maybe you should respect what they want." I asked her if she thought it was right. She said, "It's their wedding, sweetheart." She didn't say it was wrong. She didn't say she'd talk to him. She called me sweetheart in the tone people use when they're trying to soften something they don't actually plan to fight for you on. I thanked her and hung up. Then I looked at my bank account, looked at the spreadsheet I had built for them, looked at the $3,000 transfer I could trace back to the exact date, and I made a decision. Very quietly. No yelling, no dramatic speech. I simply decided that I was done. I texted my brother back, "Okay, then I'll be canceling my contributions to the wedding starting today." I'd like the $3,000 returned within 30 days. Let me know if you need my Venmo. He called me within 4 minutes. I didn't answer. He called again. I didn't answer. Then my sister called. I sent it to voicemail. Then my mom called back. I let it ring. They left messages. My brother's message started with, "I can't believe you're doing this right now," which I found fascinating because I was curious what exactly he thought I was doing. Withdrawing support from a wedding I wasn't invited to, that seemed fairly logical to me. My sister's message was more aggressive. She said I was making everything about money and that my behavior was embarrassing. My mom's message was quiet and a little sad, and she said she hoped I would reconsider. I did not reconsider. Here is what happened next, and this is the part that still takes my breath away when I think about it. I had a cat. Her name was Pepper. She was 7 years old, a gray tabby with one slightly bent ear from a scrape she'd gotten before I adopted her. I had raised her from 8 weeks old. She slept at the foot of my bed every night. She was, genuinely, one of the most consistent sources of comfort in my life during the years I spent pouring myself into other people's needs. 2 weeks after the wedding text, I had to travel for work. A 4-day trip to a conference in Chicago. I'd used a cat sitter before, but she wasn't available. My regular backup wasn't available either. I was in a pinch. My sister called me, actually called, which was unusual, and said she'd heard I needed someone to watch Pepper. She said she'd be happy to do it. She said, and I remember this specifically, "I know things have been tense, but she's your baby. I'd never let anything happen to her. I want to be honest with you." I hesitated. Something felt slightly off about the offer, but I was leaving in 36 hours and I was out of options, and she was my sister, and I told myself the situation with the wedding was separate. Pepper was separate. Family doesn't weaponize a pet. That felt like a line no one would cross. I was wrong. I dropped Pepper off on a Thursday morning. My sister was warm, normal, helped me carry in the food and the carrier and the little bed Pepper liked to sleep in. She asked about my flight. I left feeling okay about it. I landed in Chicago, got to my hotel, texted my sister to confirm Pepper had eaten. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. I texted again on Friday morning, no response. Friday evening, nothing. Saturday I called, it went to voicemail. I called my brother. He answered, which surprised me, but his voice had a flatness to it that made my stomach drop before he even said a word. I asked where my sister was. He said she was around. I asked why she wasn't responding to me about Pepper. There was a pause. Then he said, "She found Pepper a new home." I genuinely did not understand the sentence at first. My brain refused to process it. I asked him to repeat himself. He said, "She gave her to someone, a family." She said the cat was too much work and she knew a family who'd wanted a cat. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed and I did not say anything for probably 15 seconds. Then I asked, "Did she ask me? Did anyone call me? Did anyone ask my permission?" He said, "She made a judgment call. A judgment call. My 7-year-old cat. Mine, that I had raised, that slept at the foot of my bed. Gone because my sister made a judgment call while I was 4 states away at a work conference." I asked him if he understood that what she had done was illegal. He told me I was overreacting. I hung up. I want to tell you something about that moment because I think it's important. I did not cry right away. I went very still and very cold and very clear, the way I sometimes do when something is serious enough that emotion becomes a luxury I can't afford yet. I opened my laptop and I started writing everything down. Dates, times, text messages, the voicemail from my sister saying I'd never let anything happen to her. I took screenshots. I saved them to a folder. I emailed them to myself. Then I called the airline and changed my flight to the next morning. I got home Sunday. The first thing I did was contact an attorney friend of mine and explain the situation. She told me what my sister had done. Giving away property that wasn't hers without consent was in fact a legal matter. It could be treated as theft or conversion of personal property depending on the state. She helped me draft a letter. The second thing I did was call my sister's number from a different phone because she'd apparently blocked mine. She answered. I told her she had 72 hours to tell me exactly where Pepper was and facilitate her return, or I would be filing a police report and pursuing the matter legally. She laughed. She actually laughed. She said I was absolutely unhinged and that a cat was just a cat and that I needed to get perspective. I filed the police report that evening. Now, I should tell you what happened in the middle of all this with the wedding, because these two things were happening in parallel and I want you to have the full picture. After I pulled my contributions, my brother and his fiancée scrambled. The venue called them because I had been the contact on the deposit. They needed confirmation of continued booking or they would release the date. My brother had to come up with the money himself. The event coordinator I'd connected them with, my friend, called me personally to ask what was going on, and when I explained, she withdrew her discount rate. They ended up having to rebook a different vendor at a significantly higher price. The wedding happened. I was not there. I found out from my mom that my sister gave a toast in which she apparently said something about chosen family and people who show up when it counts. I sat with the irony of that for a long time. About 10 days after I filed a police report, my sister contacted me through my mom. She had found Pepper. The family she'd given her to still had her. They hadn't been looking to give her back, but when my sister explained the situation was a legal matter, they agreed to return her. I picked Pepper up on a Tuesday evening. She was fine, a little confused, but fine. She climbed into my lap in the car and stayed there the whole drive home. I held it together until I walked into my apartment, and then I sat on the floor and cried for about 20 minutes. The police report remained on file. My attorney friend advised me on the next steps, and I pursued a civil claim for the emotional distress and property matter. It was a long process, and I won't bore you with every detail, but I want you to know that it went somewhere, that it didn't just dissolve into a family argument that everyone forgot about. My brother never returned the $3,000. My sister never apologized. Not a real one. She sent me a text that said, "I'm sorry you feel hurt," which is not an apology, it's a weather report. My mom called me a few months later and said she wished the family could find a way to move forward. I told her I had already moved forward. I just wasn't moving in the same direction as everyone else. I want to talk about that actually because I think it's the part of this story that matters most. For most of my adult life, I operated under a set of assumptions about what family meant. I assumed that showing up financially, logistically, emotionally was what you did for people you loved, and that it accumulated into something, a record, a relationship with weight and history and mutual care. I assumed that if I kept filling other people's tanks, mine would eventually get filled too. What I didn't see, or what I saw and chose not to look at directly, was that the people I was pouring into had stopped thinking of me as a peer. They thought of me as a resource, a function, the person who handles things. And when I stopped handling things, I didn't become someone they needed to reconnect with. I became an inconvenience they needed to manage. The wedding invitation that wasn't an invitation. The text instead of a phone call. The assumption that I would be upset but ultimately fold. All of it makes sense when you understand that I had trained them over 15 years to expect my compliance. What I stopped doing, and this took real effort because it went against everything I had been, was making it easy for them. I stopped softening my responses to protect their feelings. I stopped initiating contact. I stopped being the one who reached out after a fight. I stopped paying for things I wasn't benefiting from. I stopped showing up to situations where my presence was taken for granted. It felt strange at first. There's a particular kind of anxiety that comes with withdrawal when you've been the caretaker in a dynamic for a long time. You feel like something bad will happen if you stop holding everything together. You feel responsible for the discomfort your absence creates, and then, gradually, you don't. I started filling that time with things I had been quietly neglecting. I took a ceramics class. I started cooking dinners I actually liked, instead of potluck dishes that were engineered to please everyone at a table where no one ever asked about my week. I had friends over without calculating how the visit might affect family relationships. I spent a long weekend in Vermont by myself in October, and I hiked and read and did not check my phone after 6 p.m., and it was one of the best trips I've ever taken. Pepper slept at the foot of my bed every night, exactly where she always had. I still think about what it would have taken for things to go differently. If my brother had called instead of texted. If my sister had, I don't know, been a different person than she turned out to be. If my mom had once, just once, said the thing I needed her to say instead of the thing that kept the peace. But I've learned that spending too much time on the counterfactuals is its own trap. It keeps you in conversation with a version of events that didn't happen, instead of letting you live in the one that did. What happened is this. I was told I wasn't wanted, and I believed them. And then I made myself a life that didn't require them to want me, and it turned out to be a better life than the one I had been performing for their benefit. I didn't win anything dramatic. Nobody came crawling back in a satisfying final scene. My mom sends me birthday texts, and I respond warmly. My brother and I have exchanged maybe 4 messages this year. My sister and I don't speak. But I wake up in the morning and nothing feels like a debt I owe. There's no one I'm bracing myself against. There's no family group chat I'm strategically responding to in a way that won't start something. There's no party I'm being excluded from. And there's no party I'm quietly funding from the outside either. Just my apartment and my cat and my ceramics class on Thursday evenings. And the particular quiet of a life you chose instead of inherited. That's the part I didn't know to want until I finally had it.